Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cyclone Insider Show. I am Travis Hines. He is Eugene Rapay. We work for the Des Moines Register where we cover Iowa State athletics, which incidentally is what we talk about on this show. Coming back from a bye week. Eugene, did you have a enjoyable and relaxing bye week, or did you just have more work to do? Because I was on vacation.
I won't answer that on the air.
My bad. Well, I appreciate you picking up the slack, so I could do less.
I hope you had a good trip, though. But no, it was fun, though. We got to do some more basketball just with football being off. So there was more basketball time. So, honestly, it was good.
Yeah, Eugene went to Omaha last Friday for Iowa State's exhibition loss to Creighton that we're going to talk about and talk about Big 12 Media Day that was yesterday in Kansas City that I was at, and Sunday's exhibition against Northwestern that we will both be at. But first, we've got football to talk about. It's a weird spot for Iowa State football. 2 straight losses, coming off a bye. You've got a top 10 BYU team coming in. And last I checked, Iowa State was favored in Las Vegas in this game. They're getting Kyle Conradi back. They should get Carson Hansen back. Dom Orange may not play. He is doubtful, according to Wednesday night's availability report. So it just feels like a very strange spot to me, Eugene. And I think there's plenty to talk about. But for me, the headline is, in my opinion, we're going to have a pretty good idea of what the rest of the Iowa State football season is going to look like by halftime of this game. And I don't say that in terms of this team is going to win out or lose out. My thought is that we've seen this team play good football, and the last 2 weeks we've seen them play very mediocre, inconsistent football. I think we're either going to see a good Iowa State football team come out strong, crisp, clean, solid football, which does not guarantee a victory, but gives you a chance, or we're going to see more mediocrity. And this team is just going to be an average Big 12 football team the rest of the way. To me, those are the 2 outcomes here. And I think it's highly likely we know that coming right out because they've been stewing in these 2 losses for a week. They're back as healthy as probably they're going to be the rest of the season. And they're playing a really good football team. Like, mediocrity will not cut it. Mediocrity will look like really bad football against a good BYU team. So I do think like the mindset here is going to be determinative to a large degree on how this final 6 weeks plays out for Iowa State football, in my opinion.
Yeah, without a doubt. To me, this is put up or shut up time, do or die, whatever cliche you want to use. But this is pretty much going to set the tone for the rest of the season for Iowa State. And we're going to see exactly what kind of team they are in the first 2 quarters and maybe if they squeeze it out, because this game from BYU already in itself, undefeated, top 10 team, tough. But then you look at the rest of the schedule, and it doesn't get easier from here. There's no real breaks. I mean, I guess you could say Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State is there at the end of the rainbow there, pal.
The cupcake waiting after you get through your vegetables and all the tough stuff first. So for Iowa State, this is just, this first game will be very telling and very, very tone setting for the rest of the way.
Let's start with the good news for Iowa State football. And I think assuming Kyle Conradi returns, what do they have him listed at? Questionable?
Questionable.
Even though Campbell said Tuesday that he was going to play. So let's assume. And he was
allegedly in a better status than Chase Smith, who was listed as probable.
Anyway, let's assume Kyle Conradi is going to play. I think he's going to play from what I've heard. I think he's been able to be back on the practice field and kick. Assuming he's back able to play at 85 to 90%. So 60-yard field goals off the table, 50 to 55 shaky, inside 50, you're feeling pretty good, right? Like, is that a fair assessment at a mostly healthy Kyle Conradi?
I would say that's a fair assessment, yeah.
That completely changes what Iowa State can be offensively. Like, I said it to Matt on Tuesday that they were playing high school football offensively. Like, you get to the 25 and that's not good enough for points, or at least an opportunity for points. Like, I mean, that's insane. Like, I don't know that we fully grasped or appreciated how, like, it just completely upends your standard strategy at the Big 12 level when you have a kicker. And again, this is not a slight on Chase Smith. I hope this is not like read as me dumping on the walk-on third-string kicker. Like the guy just not ready for that kind of responsibility and job. I'm sure he would say that. I'm sure Iowa State football would say that we had no intention of this guy ever having this opportunity right now. Like he was a third-string walk-on kicker. It is what it is. But when you don't have a Big 12 caliber reliable kicker, you might as well be, Nevada football. And I shouldn't say that because maybe they have a good kicker. Like you're playing, 2A high school football where you have to score touchdowns or you have to get inside the 15 to get points on the board. And that's a scary place to be for any football team in the Big 12. But I think it's especially tough for an Iowa State team that, one, had grown accustomed to having a 60-yard leg that they can pull off the sideline, and two, plays low possession, grind out games where they're happy to play single possession games where stacking threes makes a big difference. And when those threes become zeros, not only does that affect your scoreboard tally, but I do think it affects the offensive mindset and psyche to where I think offensive coordinator Taylor Mauser did not have a great game against Colorado. Obviously, Rocco Beck did not have a great game. And I do wonder, like, when you have to scramble your brain to, rewire it to what this offense has to do, I think that's tough on offensive players to where that puts a lot of pressure on end zone or bust. And I think we saw the results last 2 weeks. So I do think, like, Conradi being back makes Iowa State's offense much better at putting points on the board.
Without a doubt. And Taylor Mauser talked about it a little bit too a couple of weeks ago when he was last on the podium. He said that, they get upset when they have to send out the field goal team, not because, we got to send out Kyle Conradi, but that we didn't do their job or that they didn't do what they wanted to do on that drive. And now all of a sudden you're forced to go on fourth down and from maybe the 30-yard line or from the 35-yard line in opponent territory, you don't convert. And now all of a sudden, that not only are you not having to send out the field goal unit, but you just came out completely empty-handed, and that's got to completely affect the psyche or just the morale of that offense. So having Kyle Conradi back definitely changes a lot, and I don't think anyone's going to take having a kicker for granted or even having two kickers for granted anymore after this. It's crazy how much it has affected so much of what Iowa State wants to do and just how much of how they operate. But here we are. Carson Rhodes was, almost tapped in there, fourth-string kicker. But he did kick off while Chase Smith was able to will himself for that one extra point attempt.
6'8" or 6'10" or 6'8", 310. Is that what Carson Rhodes is?
Yeah, I think he's statistically at least the tallest. I don't know if he was the heaviest. He's got to be, though. I'd imagine.
Yeah, like Iowa State didn't have 300-pound offensive linemen until like the last 10 years consistently. So I can't imagine there was a 300-pound kicker. But, man, like we need to go through that play-by-play data, I think, to double-check because that's a valuable piece of trivia, the tallest and the heaviest kicker. In
Iowa State history.
Are we in, like, college football history territory there?
That's also a good point, actually, yeah. He's got to be up there. He's definitely up there. 99th percentile at least, 99.7.
Somebody whose job it is to look these things up should look these things up. Which, damn, that's us. But so, yeah, I think like it is huge. And then you get Carson Hansen back, which is big, especially after Abu Sama had a great game against Colorado. Like that was maybe Abu's best game. And I say that as somebody who was in Manhattan 2 years ago. Like that game was fluky. With the weather the way that it was, nobody could tackle or change direction. Where 2 weeks ago, like Abu just got his like in a really impressive way. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they handle those carries with Carson presumably coming back and healthy. But like there's room for this Iowa State offense to come out and be productive. And like I'm not particularly worried about Rocco Beck. Like he did not play well. He's had more up and down moments. I tend to think that this is more about the wide receivers. And he talked about it. I don't know if you were in that scrum on Tuesday, Eugene, where he brought an edit to his wide receivers about a number of situations where they read the situation differently. And they went through all these things about here's what I saw, here's what you saw, here's what we should have done. And I tend to side with the quarterback, especially the third-year starting quarterback that was probably reading that the way they were supposed to, more than the wide receivers that are in their either first year in the program or in their first year getting real reps. So yes, Rocco Beck did not play well, but I do think like that could easily be a situation where what we see is not exactly what's going on because of the miscommunication or the lack of symbiosis between the quarterback and wide receivers. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. And also I wouldn't put all of the struggles of last week's passing game struggles all on Rocco Beck. I mean, I felt like there were at least 6 or 7 balls that were catchable, and they just simply weren't brought in by the wide receiver. Maybe it was like a step off or whatever, but, right in their hands, right in their range, and just couldn't bring it in.
Yeah, I think the wide receivers and the defensive line are going to be like the top 2 culprits of underwhelming through the first 7 games, which now brings us to the bad news potentially for Iowa State on Saturday, that Dom Orange is doubtful after suffering an ankle injury that limited him to, what did I hear, 12 snaps against Colorado a couple of weeks ago, which losing Dom Orange against any team is a big deal. Losing Dom Orange against a really difficult rushing team in BYU, that has 2 of the top 10 rushers in the Big 12, with Bear Bachmeier, the quarterback, being among them. You take out your stalwart defensive tackle. That's not ideal. I mean, I think Zamir Hawk's really good, but he's not Dom Orange. And I don't think Dom Orange hasn't been hugely productive this year, but he is doing what he's designed to do, what that position is designed to do, in eating blocks. That hasn't translated to the other guys being more productive, but I'd hate to see what another free blocker for a defense allows BYU to do if Iowa State has a guy in the middle that they don't feel like they have to double team consistently.
Yeah, when the first player availability report came out on Wednesday night, I winced a little bit for Iowa State, just knowing what BYU is bringing offensively. This is a BYU team that's averaging more than 232 rushing yards per game. I mean, they have the leading rusher in the Big 12 and LJ Martin. These guys are going to carve up yards, and if you don't have Dom Orange in the middle, I mean, even with him, they had a hard time stopping the run, and memories of the Cincinnati game definitely resurfaced. But if he's not going to be there, on top of just this defense that has been trying to rebuild itself since the injuries in the secondary, this could be a long day on Saturday, especially for BYU. And just that offensive line is impressive. Even the wide receivers are good at blocking. And now you have LJ Martin, Big 12's leading rusher, who's averaging more than 6.5 yards per carry. And then Bear Bachmeier himself, he's a 6'2" quarterback that's 220. He wears the number 47. He looks more like an old school fullback than he does a quarterback. And he's another one that's tough to take down. So Iowa State's attention to detail is very much going to be tested on Saturday. And that's just the rushing game. We didn't even get to the passing attack, which they don't, it's a very balanced. They still have one of the more potent offenses in college football. They rank in the top 35 for yards per game. So this is they're gonna have Iowa State busy on defense.
Yeah, and that Cincinnati game is just, and I know that it's probably not a perfect analog, especially with the way Iowa State was walking the linebacker up. But man, you got to be worried here if you don't have your best defensive player. And this gets back to what we've talked about for a couple of weeks now, Eugene. It's what is this defense? Where's the big play ability of this defense? Point to one guy or one area or one position that makes big plays. Cue the Jeopardy music here. Is there somebody? They don't pressure the quarterback. They don't really force any turnovers. There's no game-changing plays here. It is solely dependent on bend but don't break at this point. And that's not a fun place to be, where you're pretty good, but you're never getting to great. And sometimes you drop down to pretty bad at times. Not consistently. They've only really been bad, I think, for 30 minutes. They've had bad moments, certainly that, 3rd and 17 or whatever that was to end the Colorado game, the busted coverage for the 80-yard touchdown. There's been bad moments, but the only that Cincinnati game, I think, is probably the only one you can point to where they've been consistently bad, drive after drive after drive. But like, there's just no game-changing ability there, and we haven't seen it in special teams outside of Conrarty either. Like, this team is just missing that spark. That, again, I just come back to the word playmaker, like somebody that can change the game on a single play, and I think that's probably under-discussed for Iowa State because it is such a powerful weapon to have and one that they've usually had, whether it was Jeremiah Cooper leading the country in interceptions or Bo Freeler coming down and absolutely delivering bone-crushing hits, or you go back even further to Jaquan Bailey or Will McDonald, or even like more modestly, MJ Anderson a couple of years ago, opposite Will McDonald, who became a wrecking ball from that defensive end position. Well, those guys are just not there. And, I think they would have hoped it would have been somebody like Caleb Bacon or maybe Cooper Ebel. Certainly those corners before they got hurt were candidates for that. But it's just been, I think, disappointing that this team is not able to get to the quarterback or force on any turnovers. And if you can't do those, you're putting so much stress on your fundamentals and your consistency, especially with the injuries they have at corner and the inexperience they have in the safety. Is I do think like maybe that's why you're seeing stuff like those big broken plays. It's the pound the rock mentality. Eventually it's going to crack. And I think that's what we've seen a couple times with this Iowa State defense.
Yeah, just another group that I'll be looking at very closely is particularly how or if they're even able to pressure the quarterback and how they'll manage the run. Because
why would you think they could pressure the quarterback? Like there's no evidence whatsoever that they're going to be able to pressure the quarterback, right? Like they've even gotten pretty aggressive blitzing the last couple of weeks, and they're getting
and still not getting home. Yeah. So I'm just curious to see how they deal with this BYU offense, because right now it spells like everything, all the symptoms or all the things that they've shown and all the signs are just pointing into not a great day on Saturday for that defense.
I think we're trending towards BYU here, but I do think like there is something to be said for that. This team, this program has historically been pretty good when their backs are against the wall and it feels like those walls are closing in. That's usually when they respond. And again, like I don't think this is doom and gloom. It feels a little bit like that because the expectations had just kept going up and up and up about the Big 12 championship, about the college football playoff. And those aren't completely off the table, but I think we'd be foolish to frame the rest of the way as how does Iowa State get to the Big 12 championship? Because the chances are so remote. I think now it's how do you get back to playing high-level football, playing good football, and winning some games to where you're not going to Memphis in December to like, can the Alamo Bowl be on the table? Can the Pop-Tarts Bowl be on the table again? Because I don't think anybody's trying to go to Memphis again, to go to the Liberty Bowl. Like, I don't think there is a single Iowa State fan that wants to do that. And I was talking, I can't remember to who, that somebody was like how many people blew their bowl budget on Ireland, and then they're going to be asked to like go to Memphis for like the 700th time in the last 10 years. So yeah, it's just that like you want to avoid that. And then obviously you want to avoid like the true spiral, which I don't think will happen. Like we've never really seen under Campbell, even in 2022 when they went 4-8, that team was still pretty competitive throughout the end of the season, even if they weren't winning games. And then they got blown out at TCU. But anyway, I digress. This is a precarious spot for Iowa State because like we talked about before, they could play pretty damn good football the next 3 weeks and only win one game or no games. Like I don't think TCU's as good as I thought that they were, but it's still a tricky game in November down in Fort Worth. Obviously, Arizona State's playing good football right now, although I saw that Tyson's out with a hamstring injury this weekend. But like this is just a tough spot where you could look up. You could really look up in 3 weeks and Iowa State's 5-5, right? Like that is not out of the realm of possibility here, even if they play pretty good football, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The first 30 minutes of this game, I think, is going to be so important maybe not even important. It's just going to be illustrative. Like, where is this team mentally? Where are they spiritually in the football sense? To where can they come out and deal with adversity beyond the last 2 weeks of just like the difficulties that are going to arise playing a top 10 team, turning around playing a top 25 team that absolutely hammered you in the Big 12 championship game last year, and then going and playing a pretty good football team on the road in a place where you haven't played good football. Like, this is a major stress test for this team right now.
You bring up a good point.
And by the way, all these huge jobs are opening that your coach is going to be mentioned for, that is going to also be swirling around. So it's a weird spot for Iowa State right now, I feel like.
Yeah, but to your point earlier about Iowa State responding when their backs are against the wall, I feel like I look at last year when they lost back-to-back games to Texas Tech and Kansas. I remember leaving Arrowhead Stadium thinking, man, this team is absolutely fried. Like, there is no way. Like, I don't know if they can bounce back from this. How can they do that? And then they won out for the rest of the regular season. They found a way. They rallied. There were some tough games like that Kansas State game where they had a couple of turnovers to help seal the win, and then fans stormed the field and all that. And obviously this 5-game stretch ahead is much tougher, but you really can't count them like out yet. Like, that's the thing. Like, they've shown before that they, backs against the wall, they have a couple of haymakers in them, and then all of a sudden they're back in the race.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one. I think two things can be true, because what you just said is 100% true. I also don't think last year and this year are direct correlations.
Yeah.
This team is not as good. It just is not. It does not have 2 NFL wide receivers. It doesn't have 2 elite cornerbacks. It doesn't have Bo Freeler. And like the other part too is like that Kansas game represented the rock bottom that was largely dictated by the linebacker injuries, right? Like that, the defense just was unable to compete with what at that point, like Kansas was wildly inconsistent last year, but like Kansas played great football too. Like, is anybody saying Colorado played great football a couple weeks ago? Cincinnati's pretty good. Like, they're undefeated in the Big 12, whatever. I don't think they're great, but they're an average Big 12 team that Iowa State should have beaten. Like, so to me, like, this is just the question is how good is Iowa State? And then you look at the schedule's tougher, it's longer. And injuries are playing a part, but number one, injuries aren't getting any better. And number two, this doesn't feel completely injury related, right? Like, it's injury influenced, but not to the degree of last year where like you literally saw a position group wiped out. So like that to me is why you can find hope there that this is not the end, because there's still possibility. But I would say if you're an Iowa State fan, I'd have cautious hope, and I'd look at it more like, let's just get back to playing good football and let the cards fall where they are. Because I don't think that this is a 1-to-1 comparison. I think they're in a much different and more difficult spot for a number of reasons. And number one is I don't think this is as good a football team this year as last year.
Avoid Memphis, the number one goal for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
No Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, I think like that should be the rallying cry, right? Like, nobody's trying.
No, of course not. Yeah.
And the crazy part is as many times as Iowa State has been to the Liberty Bowl in the last decade plus, I have never covered a Liberty Bowl. So like, this is no slander on my part. It's just the repetitiveness, I think, of Iowa State fans and having high expectations, both after winning 11 games last year and then starting off 5-0 this year, to where, you're going to feel like, if you're an Iowa State fan, like, man, this is we're in the same spot we were 3 years ago, the same spot we were in 8 years ago. And it's like, man, like, this is disappointing, right? Like, that, it's just going to feel that way.
No,
invariably it'll be 45 degrees and rainy in Memphis, which is
very different from San Antonio or Orlando, Florida.
I mean, I'd rather go to Memphis than Orlando personally, like just in terms of a city. I don't know if I've ever gone into my Orlando distaste on this podcast, but we'll save that one for another day.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Should we talk some hoops?
It's time to talk hoops, I think. They just had Big 12 Media Day. You were there, and obviously the exhibition against Creighton, and now the exhibition against Northwestern coming up.
Yeah, and then we're going to have Birchie on to talk women's hoops as well. But let's start with you, Eugene. You were there at, what's that thing called? CHI Arena?
The CHI Health Center. Yeah.
On the banks of the Missouri there in Omaha. 23-0 run. Iowa State got pretty well spanked in an exhibition game. So, don't get too worked up one direction or the other. But what did you see that stood out to you on Friday night?
I think the first half was a tale of two halves. The first half was very troublesome, just from the stagnant offense, too much ISO ball, not enough ball movement, no real off-ball movement. It just wasn't looking great. But then defensively was probably even worse. They were just always a step behind Creighton's ball movement and just their guys. Players from the Blue Jay side were just getting open looks from three. They were cashing it in. And also, Creighton was shooting the lights out, too. It got to the point where, even if Iowa State covered perfectly or was actually in position for that possession or that stretch, the Creighton guy was still finding a way to drill the three. Nick Graves was just popping off. They were just killing Iowa State during that 23-0 run. And maybe that was when the doom and gloom started. You look on Twitter a little bit. I'm starting to sit there thinking to myself, even if Taman Lipsey was here, how much would that change? They're just getting absolutely ran off the court right now. But then second half, I think what stood out to me the most was just Iowa State showed some problem solving. They showed some improved defense, especially, and that's exactly how the turnaround for them started. Just forcing a lot of Creighton turnovers, capitalizing in transition, moving the ball a little bit more. And then they were somehow able to cut it to 8. They had a 28-point deficit early in the second half, whittled it down to 8, and then Creighton's calling timeouts. All of a sudden you think, wow, Iowa State has the potential chance here, but it just happened a little too late. But I think that second half erased any doom and gloom or any overreaction you may have had. But also, it is an exhibition game. There was no Taman Lipsey, so you don't want to overreact to it too much. But 0 for 14 from the three-point line wasn't great. Defense in the first half was very troublesome, but then it was much improved in the second half. And now I'm curious to see what happens here in this Northwestern exhibition. And then we'll see once the regular season tips off against Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah, I think any grand conclusions you draw from an exhibition, you're putting yourself in a bad spot. I don't think you can draw any major issues from that game. I don't think you'll be able to draw much from Sunday as well. I think it's a new team with a pretty high floor, given the returners that give it some time. I have a pretty high level of confidence that they'll figure it out to one degree or another. And we're gonna find out pretty early, what this team is, at least in the early goings. You get Mississippi State in the second week of the season. Then they're off to Las Vegas for the Players era, where they're going to play St. John's and Creighton again, and then probably a pretty good third opponent. So we're going to see the real thing sooner than later. So I think patience and emotional detachment from exhibition games is probably in order. I think Taman is on track to be able to play November 3rd. Talking to him and TJ in Kansas City yesterday, does not seem like there's any concern. Taman took off the brace. He's jogging now. So if he's not ready November 3rd, it'll be shortly thereafter, I'm pretty confident in. So we'll both be at Hilton on Sunday for that exhibition game. So be sure to check that out. We're now going to bring in Tommy Birch to talk women's basketball. Birchie, what's up, man?
Not much. How about you guys?
We're hanging in there. What you were in Kansas City this week. Women's basketball had their media day last Thursday. I think there is probably not the same level of anticipation this year as there was last year, but I tend to think that this team has pretty good ceiling. I mean, when you talk about the people they got coming back, when you talk about the superstars they have coming back, Jada Williams, the Arizona transfer at point guard, there's a lot of interesting pieces here that maybe Iowa State. This is going to be the year that I think a lot of people thought they were going to have last year. I think you could reasonably argue that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are reasons for kind of optimism and maybe a little bit of nervousness too. Sorry about that. That's my son. But yeah, I mean, they have the experience. They have some size. They have some versatility. They have some important additions. But then you also have a lot of that same team that, hey, last year there were these huge expectations. There was kind of this hope that this was going to be a team that was going to compete for a conference championship, a tournament championship, and make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. They just never did. So I think a lot of the players have kind of talked about how that's maybe humbled them a little bit, maybe taught them a little bit about what comes with possibly being a championship team as well. But yeah, there's definitely reasons for excitement.
Yeah, I think like they just were who they were last year, right? Like it was a pretty black and white line in the sand in terms of, they were what, 1-8, 1-7 against top 25 teams. Like that shows you pretty much you're not a top 25 team, right? Like, and that's going to be the challenge for them to level up this year.
Yeah, and I think the good thing for Iowa State is they kind of eased off the non-conference schedule a little bit too, where it's not as difficult, and maybe that doesn't battle test them as much when it comes to the Big 12 schedule and competing for that conference championship. But definitely the difficulty of last year's non-conference schedule, I think, took a lot of wind out of their sails, where they had probably one of the toughest non-conference schedules in the nation, take on UConn, take on South Carolina. Not to mention like the in-state rivalry games that you have with Northern Iowa, Drake, and those are all very good opponents too. So, I think we're still going to see a very good Iowa State team this year because of a lot of those reasons I said before. What they have coming back, what they added in the transfer portal. I think obviously the big difference maker is going to be Jada Williams and how much he can change that point guard spot. Over the last 5 years, you knew what you were getting out of Emily Ryan. It was going to be a pretty consistent effort of leadership, facilitating, and stuff like that. But I think Jada Williams brings a different dynamic to the table, and how different and how big of an impact that can have is probably going to be the big difference maker for Iowa State.
What is Audie Crooks as a junior?
Yeah, I mean it's still just making some improvements to her game. Obviously she's one of the best scorers in the Big 12. She led the Big 12 in scoring. She was the preseason player of the year, but she's got to improve on her free throw shooting. She's got to improve on her offensive rebounding, and she's just got to expand her game too, where she's not just somebody that's sitting in the post and picking up easy layups and stuff like that. If she can just be a consistent threat and do so much more, that's going to open up some big things for Iowa State too. So, she is now the center point of everything when it comes to the Big 12, and how teams are going to attack Iowa State and how they're going to watch. How they're going to prepare for the Cyclones.
Big winter ahead on both sides of the Sukup basketball complex with, I think, a couple of pretty good basketball teams that should make the winter interesting and potentially the spring even more so. He's Tommy Birch. The other one there is Eugene Rapay. This one here is Travis Hines. This has been the Cyclone Insider Show from the Des Moines Register. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will catch you next time.